Ladies and gentlemen, Cornetta Lane.
I remember meeting my father for the very first time. I was maybe 3 or 4 years old, and I was sitting there on the floor at my uncle's house on the west side of Detroit on Hayden Street. And I was singing along to the opening credits of my favorite Saturday morning cartoon, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I was singing my heart out when I hear someone yell out, "Cornetta, your dad is here." I perk up, and like Bambi, I stand with shaky legs. I walk over to the front door, and through the glass frame, I can see Cornell Robert Lewis, my paternal father, standing there, 5'8", medium build, ironed pleats in his blue jean pants, crispy white shirt, and a FUBU varsity jacket. And when our eyes connect, he opens his arms, and with a flick of his wrist, he beckons me to come outside to greet him. And I bolt out the door toward him. And no sooner than 3 feet apart, he dropped down to one knee and took me into his arms and rocked me back and forth like a newborn baby. Wow. When he released, I don't remember much of what he told me that day, but I do remember how I felt. I felt like a brick of gold being guarded behind a high security system at some bank on Wall Street. I felt protected. I felt for the first time the love of my father. When he released me from his embrace, he asked someone for a piece of paper and a pen, and he jotted down his beeper number. And he gives me the slip of paper and say, "If you ever need anything, I want you to give me a page." I say, "Okay," and then he leaves. A few months prior to that, my mom got married to my stepfather, whom I proudly call my father and whose last name I bear. And when I arrived home later that evening, my mom asked, "So, what did you do at your uncle's house?" And I walk into the doorway of the kitchen and lean on the post, and I say, "Oh, I was watching cartoons when Cornell came over, gave me his number, and told me to call him." And my parents were quiet at first. My mom has this pleasantly look surprise on her face, and it looks like my stepfather is in heavy contemplation. And my stepdad begins to speak, and he cautions me about my father's world and warns me that it's no place for a growing girl. He says, "Cornetta, do you know what your father does for a living?" I shrug my shoulders, and he says, "He's a drug dealer, and he sells things to people to make them very, very sick." And as he continued to talk about how dangerous my father was, his voice kind of faded into the background, and all I could hear were my own thoughts. I thought to myself, well, how dangerous could he be if he made me feel so loved? I felt defenseless. And my stepfather continues, "God doesn't like what your father is doing, and one day he'll have to answer to that." And I can feel Cornell's embrace being ripped away from me. And he was saying even further, "You might want to throw away that number in order to prevent yourself from getting into that world." And so I looked at the slip of paper with my father's beeper number written on it, and I shredded it and threw it away in the trash receptacle. And as the day fell into night, I contemplated going into the trash to just retrieve it, but I never did. So for 8 years, I didn't have any communication with Cornell. He had become this distant figure, this phantom of loving memories. He was an absent father. He didn't make it to my kindergarten ceremony. He didn't fight the monsters under my bed and in the closet. He didn't coach me through my first crush in grade school. He wasn't there. I threw away his number, but he didn't reach out to me. Did he not care? Did he not love me? And these were the questions that wafted around in my head at night and would often be the reason why I would cry myself to sleep. One night in particular, though, I had this spine-chilling nightmare. And in this nightmare, Cornell Robert Lewis shows up at my parents' home, and he wants to talk. And so I come outside, and I'm face-to-face with him. And as I'm looking into his eyes, fear of him overtakes me to the point that I feel like I need to run. So as I turn away to run, he transforms into this lion. And it scared the crap out of me. And so I just started to run for my life. And I run to a factory that in the dream existed, but in reality it does not. And I run up a flight of stairs. He's hot on my heels. And so to create a greater distance between him and I ran through a door and shut it immediately behind me. And he crashed into the door. And I knew that he crashed into the door because I heard a thud and the door shook violently. I didn't check to see if he was okay. I knew I needed to get out of that factory. So I ran through a series of hallways, down some stairs, out the door, and back home to my parents' home. Now, as an 8-year-old child, it was a crazy dream, right? Like your father turns into a lion and he chases you. But as an adult, I realized that dreams and nightmares are basically your state of mind at that time. And it also has these really interesting messages embedded in them. So 2 years ago, at age 26, I was talking to a couple of friends, and we were at Belle Isle on a park bench. And my friends helped me to decode the messages that were in my dreams, that was in my dream. And one friend asked, when your father chased you, were you afraid that he would devour you as a lion would its prey? And I say, no. I was fearful, but I don't know why. And after some consideration, I just realized that my dad, I was fearful of him because of everything that my stepfather was telling me. Like, he lives in a dangerous world and it's not a world for you. And then the other friend asked, so when your father hurt himself, did you see him again in your dream? And I say, no, I didn't see him in my dream. And I think about back again, it was 8 years between the time that my father gave me his beeper number and the time that I saw him again. And so maybe I emotionally hurt my father. And so these interpretations of this dream really helped me to do two things. One, get over the fact that I didn't have a consistent relationship with my father. And two, it made me want to reconnect with him. And I believe my desire was so strong that the universe would soon provide me with that opportunity. So last year, at age 27, I am at Target checking out at the register. And don't you know how you can sense that someone has their eyes laser beamed on you and you can feel them approaching you from your periphery? And it's an eerie feeling. And so I turned to see who was approaching me. And it was my cousin, Cornell's cousin. And I shrieked. I gave her a hug because I haven't seen her in a while. And we did our obligatory questions. How are you? How's mom? How's the family? And finally, to the question I've been waiting to ask, which is, do you have my father's number? She says yes, but because he changes his number so often, I don't know if this is the current one. So she reads off his number in her phone, and I quickly store it into mine. I wrap up my conversation with her, walk out to my car, stuff my bags into my car, and there I am in the front seat of my car alone, debating whether or not I should call him. And before I could make a conscious decision, I was dialing the number and the phone is ringing. And I'm like, okay, cool, the number is valid. Oh crap, the phone is ringing. The phone is ringing. I haven't talked to this man in 5 years. What in the world I'm gonna say to him? And then I hear the phone connect, and it was followed by silence. And I hear his voice, and he goes, is that right? What's going on, Cornetta? And I'm like, in my head, did he turn into the great Houdini? How did he know that it was me? And then I'm like, no, that's not a logical reason. And so the only logical thing that I can come up with is, dude, did you have my number this whole time and you didn't give me a call? And I could tell that he was taken back by me calling him dude because he chuckles and then he says, no, I didn't have your number stored, but I remembered it when it showed up on my caller ID. It looked familiar to me. The phone call could have ended there because he said he remembered the number. it looked familiar to him. And for me, that meant he didn't forget about me. He didn't forget who I was. And maybe in a strange way, that was his way of saying, I love you. So I got a chance to talk to him 2 more times after that. And each time we talked, he wanted to talk about his wife, who he had been married to at that point for about 8 years. And he would say, she's insanely jealous. She thinks I'm out here cheating on her, but I'm not. I have to sleep in a hotel room in order to have peace to go to sleep. And to be honest, my dad had a string of unfaithful relationships, so I didn't think it was strange that they would have trust issues. And in my head, I'm like, that's your fault for marrying a crazy woman. Like, that's your fault. So February 2nd of this year, I'm at the dining room table with my mom and my boyfriend, and my phone rings. And we're playing the game of 5-card tonk, and I'm like showing them the business, right? Like I'm spraying on them left and right. That's not true. So I answer the phone, and it's my cousin who I ran into at Target. And from the sound of her voice, I could tell that it was serious. And so I excused myself from the dining room table and walked into the adjacent room in the living room. And I'm like, what's up? And she takes a deep breath, and she says, Cornetta, your father and his wife got into a fight, and she reached for a gun. There was a struggle over the gun. The gun discharged, it hit your little sister in the leg. She is in the hospital, but she's okay. But your father isn't. She shot him in the face, and he's dead. And I couldn't think of anything to say. I just turned mute. And she could tell that. And so she said, I'll give you some time to collect yourself. Call me if you need anything. And so I thought I had enough strength in my legs to walk back into the dining room, but they just collapsed beneath me. And I just fell into a fit of sobs. And I can hear my boyfriend ask my mom, is Cornetta laughing? And my mom's like, yeah, I think so. And I wanted to yell out to them, no, I'm not laughing, I'm crying, and I'm hurting, and I need you right now. But again, I'm mute. And so I just allowed my sobs to turn into wails. And that's when they realized that I wasn't laughing. And my boyfriend gets up from the table, and he finds me in the living room on the floor with my head between my legs, and I'm just like shaking uncontrollably. He picks my heavy body off the ground, and he consoles me. And he asks about 4 times, I don't know what happened. And on the 5th time, I was finally able to say, my dad's wife shot and killed him. And through the blurriness of my tears, I could see my mom hang her head low for her old friend and sweetheart. The next day, my great aunt calls, and she calls to let me know that there will be a family gathering and to collect information for my father's obituary. And she says, Cornetta, your brothers and sisters will be there, so you should come. So I go to the house, I pull up, I walk into the house, and I could see 4 oddly familiar faces. 5 of Cornell's oldest children were in the room that night, and we all resemble him in a way. My brothers have his hands, and my sister Paris and I have his smile. And I think it's funny because I was raised an only child, but here I have inherited 7 brothers and sisters. 7. I belong to a tribe of 8, right? My papa indeed was a Rolling Stone. I am eternally tied to that loving moment that Cornell and I shared on Hayden Street some 23 years ago, because it was then that I learned that a father's love is irreplaceable and special. My father remembered me through my phone number, and I remember him tonight through telling his story. Rest in love, Dad.
Don't you just love Cornetta Lane?